For 10 years, I was a full-time entrepreneur creating brands in the travel space in South America that grew to 7 figures in revenue. And now I'm a fractional CMO with a consultancy with about 15 people on my team. Chief marketing officers in the United States make $300,000 to $600,000 how long they stay. Companies that usually hire me can't afford that. I'm usually brought in when CEOs have analysis paralysis with too much marketing data. So they rent me, they rent my strategy and my ideas and my experience for 5 to...
Hello and welcome to the Virtual Power Teams podcast. And today we have an exciting guest, Peter Murphy Lewis. He joins us from Kansas, but he is a citizen of the world and larger-than-life individual. He is a fractional CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, so he will explain what fractional means. But he's also a podcaster, he's a TV host, he's an entrepreneur. He helps entrepreneurs and companies to grow, as I said, larger than life. Peter, welcome to the podcast, and please tell us, with your own words, who you are and what you do.
Excited to be here, Peter. Great name. From a professional point of view, I'm usually brought in when CEOs have analysis paralysis with too much marketing data. As you mentioned, fractional CMO, that is a freelancer, chief marketing officer. Chief marketing officers in the United States make $300,000 to $600,000, oftentimes getting a piece of equity depending on how long they stay. Companies that usually hire me can't afford that, or they're afraid to pay someone full time and have that person, leave in 6 months. So they rent me, they rent my strategy and my ideas and my experience for 5 to 15 hours per week, usually for 6 to 18 months to solve a very serious problem. So I've worked with banks, I've worked with zoos. I actually live inside of a zoo, Peter, so we can talk about that later and guide their marketing strategy. Worked with AI companies, a lot of software companies, a lot of B2B. And then my first experience in entrepreneurship was I started a B2C travel company in South America in 2007.
All right. Fantastic. You must be very productive, to deliver, to make an impact with so few hours a week. Are you using AI, or what's the secret of your productivity?
I don't know if AI is the secret, but it is a pillar of my productivity. So I'm an early adapter in almost everything with technology. AI is definitely a huge part of it. I just got out of a stand-up call with my right-hand woman and project manager, and I said, we just onboarded some interns 2 weeks ago, and I realized that they are not using AI correctly. Can we set up a training on Tuesday? And she said to me, she goes, well, what are the basics that we should teach them? And I said, why don't we start with how you start every project with AI to kind of frame the scope and have a creative brief. Secondly, how do you improve the prompts to improve that process as you start to work with it? And then how do you use prompts and AI to question everything that you've done so that it's a polished product? And I said, if they start with those 3 things, their life is going to get significantly easier.
Yes, thank you. And we will deep dive into this internship. Looks like a key vehicle in your delivery machine. But one question I usually ask entrepreneurs like yourself, when was this decisive moment in your life when you decided, now I am going to do what I do? When was this moment in time?
My wife and my mother would say that I haven't had that precise moment. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. So I've worn many different hats from up until the age of 27 years old. I was going to be a diplomat. I was a full-time professor at the University of Chile. I was a political correspondent for CNN in South America. From about 27 till about 37 years old, for 10 years, I was a full-time entrepreneur creating brands in the travel space in South America that grew to 7 figures in revenue, 4 different cities, and eventually sold that company. And then I became a TV host, and now I'm a fractional CMO with a consultancy with about 15 people on my team, working with medium-sized portfolio of clients. And I don't know what I'm going to do, Peter. Hopefully, this conversation will give me that precise moment.
Okay, so let's see if we have an awakening moment of truth. You've mentioned internships in onboarding, 2 very hot words in this war for talent times. And then onboarding being key for, sweating the people you have and keeping engagement. We two aspects we could explore which are beneficial for this audience. On one hand is remote, because if I understand correctly, your team and interns are remote. So how do you ensure this remote synergy and you can really deliver with a remote team? And second question I'll ask it now is how do you deal with these internships and how you onboard people remotely so they could be effective and there is a strong cohesion and then fit into the team? And you've mentioned the AI onboarding as such, but up to you now. What's kind of secret of your remote team, your leadership secret, and then how you deal with the internship and their onboarding?
I think that the secret to my success or my team's success or Strategic Pete's success over the last 15 years of working with interns is probably around the filtering process, the application process. Second, it's probably the onboarding process. Third, it's intimately intrinsically tied to skilling people up. And then probably fourth is feedback. I would say those are kind of the four elements. And I wish that I had those better structured. I am writing a book right now on the process around building remote teams, specifically with interns. I think that it's a unique place for marketing and it works and it helps companies that need to grow quickly. So I don't have it perfect, but hopefully in 6 months it will be perfect. And maybe you can help me fine tune it today.
Okay. I have 2 books on remote teams, virtual teams, translated to 6 languages for my big surprise, because I'm a master of mathematics. I'm a numbers guy, but somehow my passion about remote teams kind of transpired into the books. Tell me, out of these 15 people, how many are interns?
Every single person on the team started off as an intern with me, except for one. There's one person from Romania who did not start as an intern. Every single other person started as intern with me. So my right-hand woman who helps me with branding and strategy, she was an intern in June of 2020. And now she oversees all branding and strategy with my clients. My right-hand kind of project manager, general manager, she was an intern. She's from Mexico and she started in 2022. And everyone else was an intern. So my ads people are interns, my copywriters are interns, my SEO experts were interns.
I guess many entrepreneurs are facing this issue. When they start growing, they need new people and they reach out for remote. An intern is a very flexible way to start. You mentioned the 4 pillars. Let's just look a little bit. The first one, if I remember correctly, was the application process and selecting and kind of matchmaking to your roles. What do you do there differently so it works in the end?
There's probably a couple different elements to it that make it successful. The first one is the copy, the images, the video, the call to action, what we ask of you to do. So our job application is written from the very beginning to attract you. I find that most job applications are dissuasive and they don't want you to apply. So they make it look difficult. They look boring. They look like a job application from 1995. Looks like a place I would never want to work at. So I have a picture of me skydiving in the job application where my hands are like this. I don't know why my hands were lifted up in the air and I look like a squirrel. So in the job application, it says, if you feel comfortable making fun of the CEO of this company when he did his first skydiving and he looks like a squirrel, then this culture is for you. There's a podcast where they are forced, if they're going to apply, they are supposed to listen to the podcast, which would be like them listening to me and you. So they get a feel for the energy of the team, for why I'm passionate about this project. And then in their job application, they have to send a loom of 3 things that they learned about the company and the way that we approach solving problems. And then a question that you would have for Peter after listening to the podcast. So that podcast warms you up to who I am and my style, but also it allows me to make sure that I pay attention to what motivates you and what you liked when you send that in. And then I would say we feel the copy lets people know that this might be the hardest thing that they've done up till this point in their professional career, that we're looking for A players. We let them know what's going to be hard, but we let them know that for 6 months of their time with a minimum stipend, we're going to teach them an MBA in marketing. So we try to filter out any B players by dissuading them from applying because we tell them how hard it is. And when you tell an A player how hard something is, their competitive nature comes out And we really don't have very many people that we have to filter out. Our last internship application was about a month ago. We chose 387 applicants who signed up for an internship for 6 months for a very small stipend where they're going to have to work their butts off.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Very engaging, very modern approach.
You're an expert. What could I do better? I feel like after you give me some feedback, I'm going to have 360 applicants.
No, I love that. I'm not an expert in like onboarding people or finding the right people, but the elements that you mentioned, this engagement, there is now, I'm not sure if you use AI, but IBM Watson have a number of applications for HR services, the whole life cycle from selecting, then onboarding, then developing, then career development, and so on. And this showing the people in advance how it looks, how it feels to work for the company was a key distinguisher, what you do with the podcast and so on. And then raising the bar and using their competitive nature and challenging them up front, all this is brilliant and very modern. So nothing to add, actually, spot on. And then, in fact, some of the onboarding starts in the selection process, but what do you do in the onboarding so it is effective? And I think this is really the challenge of many companies with the remote first. Onboarding is key, and sometimes not being able to spend time, look into the eyes of the managers, of your peers becomes a challenge. How did you resolve that? You call it like remote synergy.
This has evolved over time, but kind of the gist of what I've done from the beginning that works is we try to manage expectations before day one. And so the day that we accept them, they receive a very long email from me or my right-hand woman, Lena, getting them very excited. We tell them this is really hard. We tell them how many people applied. We tell them that they made it. We tell them we check their references, which we do. We don't take any intern that we haven't checked their references. And then we tell them specifically if they're ready to accept it, and we reemphasize how hard it's going to be. It's 6 months. We tell them no quitting early. If they quit early, we tell their references that they quit early so that it'll impact them. So we put a little bit of accountability in there. And then we let them know, reply saying, yes, you're excited. And 2, what is the thing that you have to do before you start on onboarding on day 1? Which in my experience, an intern who doesn't have much experience in marketing, the most challenging thing at the beginning is learning a new project management tool. So we tell them to go sign up for our project management tool. At this time, it's Monday.com, but I've used Asana and Trello and Basecamp, so it doesn't really matter. So I say, go spend 3 hours, log in with your personal email, take the tutorials, get familiar with the jargon, how to move things around, the workflow. Because I said, when you're working across 10 to 20 clients with a team of 15 people, things move so fast that this is going to be the scariest thing your first 5 days. And if you can get rid of this fear before you start, everything else is going to be easy. So that they get going on that on day 1. Then it is about encouragement. It's letting them know that we're going to be on their side. And we assign them one project to start to figure out what their skill set is. And this project we assign to them is something that has already been done. So they can see what success looks like. They have an SOP. They have someone who's going to support them and train them, which is usually a previous intern or some type of manager. And then we tell them how many hours it should take. And we let them know, don't spend 8 hours on this, spend 4 hours on this. And we let them know what we're trying to determine is what they're good at so we can coach them up to their strengths, not to their weaknesses. So if they fail at the specific project, we immediately know they're not going to be a writer, or they're not going to be able to do copywriting, or they're not going to be creative at ads, or they can't help out with videos, or they can't ever do customer research type of thing. So we let them know that we're trying to figure out what they're great at, so that we can help them contribute from the beginning. And then the next item that I would add to it, Peter, that I think is nuanced, is every intern is expected to fill out about a 5-question survey at the end of their workday for their first 30 days of working at Strategic Peak. And in that survey, I'm trying to determine their love language. One of the most important books that I've ever read is The 5 Languages of Love.
Yes.
And I'm trying to figure out, what is the way that this person wants me to motivate them? How do they want to feel appreciated? So the way that I try to determine that is I say, if you had to compliment yourself today for one thing that you did well, what would it be and what were the words you would use? And that intern says something along the lines of, You know what? I feel very happy with how organized I was with the project management tool, and that I felt comfortable speaking up and asking a question in front of my peers because I was a little bit nervous. Okay, so I'm starting to figure out the person spent a lot of time on the tool, which is what I asked. So this person is anxious, this person is prepared, this person is organized. I already start to figure out what they're going to be good at. And then I figure out how they want to feel. I'm thinking in Spanish. Sorry, Peter. I speak Spanish at home with my wife from South America. So how they want to be praised, and it's a little bit of pressure in front of their team. It's the ability to speak up, that they might be afraid of judgment. And then the other questions have to do if tomorrow you were to work 100% on your own without anybody overseeing you. What is something that you feel comfortable with that you think you could contribute to the team immediately? And the person might say, oh, you know what? I felt really comfortable with the way they talked about customer research or competitor research or around SEO, or I already know how to write blogs. I can help. So the person's already telling me and my managers what they can do tomorrow and start to contribute. And that's going to make them feel already integrated to the team. And there's a couple other questions, but they're iterations of that. And I think the other item, Peter, and I think this has to do with part of your methodology, which is around building trust, is I force them from day one on every single survey to critique something about their onboarding for the first 30 days. Mm-hmm. So I say, this cannot be left blank. If you had to improve the way that you've been onboarded today, what is one thing that could be done better? Yes. And then I'll put in parentheses, do you wish there would have been less text, more video? Do you wish you would have had someone reply to your Slack messages more quickly? Do you wish someone would have been more polite? Do you wish someone would have given you a book to support you? And if the person, in the first 2 or 3 days, interns don't feel comfortable critiquing because they know that I'm reading it and the managers are reading it, I will take a screenshot and I will put it into a group Slack message saying, this person, and I won't say the name usually, and I'll say, this person doesn't feel comfortable critiquing their onboarding. If we were perfect at this, we wouldn't be here working with interns, or I would be a multi-billionaire. I love this part of it, and I need to improve. If you don't feel comfortable critiquing me in the way that we're onboarding, you might not be a great cultural fit. Tomorrow, I need you to critique me. And so the team needs to feel comfortable questioning me.
Wow, fantastic. These are very advanced things you're doing. Usually, we build trust initially looking at a little bit in the past. People present themselves with a life journey, which builds a lot of credibility. People discover similarities and so on. I have a flash intro of 4 questions where people can ask each other, and then again, they build connection and trust. But what you do with current, every day having the survey very specific to the point here and now is a great way to kind of engage those people. How do you deal with those data? Do you somehow structure it and have a profile for each and everyone, and maybe some trends and maybe some groups with similar? Is there any profiling happening based on these surveys for you, and is it full transparent? What do you do with those data?
There's qualitative profiling. So somebody on my team, usually the first person who receives the notification on Google spreadsheet, takes a screenshot of that person's survey and puts it into our Slack group for only intern managers. And there's 2 to 4 people that are managing in there. And it'll say something like, Rebecca's survey today. And then the person will make a small observation like, hey, Elijah, Rebecca said that she felt a little bit lost with the SEO blog that you assigned to her. Can you reach out to her and let her know, ask her how she needs to feel supported? Hey, Peter, Rebecca says that she's interested in business development. She wants to do anything that's possible to work next to you for 30 minutes to an hour a day. Are there any business development projects that you're working on that she could come in and sit in as a silent observer? And then you could analyze if she might be able to contribute. Perfect. And then that screenshot is happening with every intern every single day. So we onboarded 3 interns 2 weeks ago. So for the last 14 days, there's been 3 screenshots, and we're tagging some manager about some type of observation, something anecdotal, and then we'll start to figure out who that person, how they're motivated, what they're going to be good at, what they're scared, what they're not good at, and we'll try to move them off those projects.
Excellent. So you're very responsive, very agile, working on their words, and you kind of build credibility. But again, these massive screenshots, you could even put AI to discover some trends and sentiments and so on. Are you doing some analysis, or for now, It's just the management who is...
I'm not, but I'm glad you asked me. I feel like as a believer, as a cult member of AI, I should be using it better. I think I'm going to make a note as we're speaking that figure out how about to do that. If you have any suggestions, please let me know.
Now, this is your data. This is your asset. You could do it anytime. And as your team grows and maybe some people come and leave, you could have a valuable insights, which you integrate. And maybe some of it, I'm a big fan of full transparency. For sure, there are things that has to remain confidential between two people and so on. But for the most of it, transparency is key. And I wonder if you could play it, having an open culture. Many of the remote first companies, which seems to be your case, do you have an office? Do you have any people going to the office, or everybody's fully remote?
Everybody's remote. Like right now, yes. I think I'm the only person in the United States. Have 2 people in Pakistan, 1 person in Bangladesh, 1 in Toronto, Canada, Mexico, Germany, Kenya,
yes,
Chile, Argentina. So everybody's remote. I've met of my full-time members, I've made an effort to meet them. I went to the wedding of 1, met 1 recently in Europe, but we don't have an office.
Okay. Many of the fully remote companies, some of them even 1,000+ employees, they kind of live this full transparency culture, which means, the P&L is fully transparent. Any strategic decisions, the full rationale is transparent to the people, and so on. And those insights, which not everyone does as you do, every day a survey and acting upon, that's another opportunity to build open culture, which in the end drives engagement and commitment from the people. So I'm just sharing what the bigger kind of boys and girls doing. And you mentioned they have somebody to support them. Is this like a formal mentoring or like a buddy? Or how formal is it, this support that they get from individual person, which is also a very popular model? I'm just curious how you implemented that.
So we have a daily check-in with the manager of the interns. Ideally, the manager of those interns, which is more like a buddy system, is an intern from the previous generation. So right now with the 3 interns that are being onboarded, their manager who checks in with them every single day is Laura. And she is an intern from Italy 6 months ago, and she's fantastic. I brought her on full time at the end of the internship. And so she knows what I expect. She knows the culture. She knows how to create the culture. It's the first time she's overseen people. So she's learning to be a manager, and she's being skilled up in real time. But she did it recently, with somebody 6 months ago. So it's really, really fresh. And then for anything that is not self-guided, some type of project that is newish, that an intern is developing or creating, they have a direct manager for that project. So like the example of the business development, I have an intern, Danielle, who's interested in that project. So now she's working, an hour daily with me, and I'm giving her feedback every single day. There's a person who's helping me sell my TV show and the documentary that I've recently done. He's from Chile, so he gets 30 minutes of my time every day to get feedback, because those are things that require a little bit more hand holding. If the process is designed and SOP is done, it's managed in a kind of a group setting. So maybe the content writer overseeing all 3 interns at the same time, not a one-on-one.
And the managers of the interns, as you said, is he kind of overseeing all interns and he's their buddy, or they have some other project-based, expertise-based buddies or mentors?
Currently, the way that we divide up the team is if you are a writer or if you're not a writer. And each one of those have their own managers. Now, we make everyone who comes in, even not as a writer, learn to write a blog in an SEO optimized format that would be able to rank, so that you go through it, because it might be one of the hardest things you can learn at my internship. You might never get something published, but you need to go through the legwork, the hard work that everyone else is doing, and then you get split off into where you are. And that's just the way that we divide up our team between generalists and then writers.
Excellent. Just a question, are you using VR at all? I know many remote teams, they have check-ins like on Zoom, but they also have another check-in which is more personal, most gamified on VR. And for example, PwC after COVID, they employ like 2,000 people every year, sort of. And onboarding is a big issue, and they use VR to kind of onboard, to listen to the CEO and all C-level. They recorded video in VR, so they feel, and there is some even interactive elements. You could ask question to the CEO without taking his time, which for your size, they get you directly. But are you using VR in any creative ways to improve performance?
I'm not. I like the idea. We do in about once a month, we do some gamification Zoom calls that are more cultural based, more getting to know you. And those are very competitive. As I told you, we look for A players. So everybody's trying to win, whether it be some type of hangman or some type of history or some type of, inventing names or 20 questions, but haven't implemented VR yet. It's a good idea.
Okay. Excellent. One aspect is now getting very popular after Google Project Aristotle, which they analyzed their best teams, their best performing teams, and they were looking for the common feature, common characteristics. Not sure if you know about this project. It's been like 5-6 years ago. And they come up without any exception, all their best performing teams, they have psychological safety. People feel safe enough to take risks, not being afraid that they will be laughed at, demoted, fired, and they feel safe enough to show vulnerability. And if you have this safety, you unleash performance. Now, one of the ways to kind of make people feel safe is to make mistake or even failure okay. So to turn it into learning opportunities. And some companies do so-called fuck-up Fridays, where they share, what didn't work per plan, but what they learned. Do you have anything in this space to kind of make people feel safe and turn into performance?
Yeah, I love the question. I think that this is something that I've improved over time into kind of a procedure or to an SOP and part of our culture. I think there's a number of ways that we do it. The first way that I try to do it is I try to share my mistakes. And I make 2 to 4, not egregious, but 2 to 4 serious mistakes that do not look like something a manager or a CEO would do per week, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like one could be a grammatical error. One could be send it to the wrong segment of an email. One could be not checking my marketing scorecard and we had a dip in a keyword that we should have optimized a blog, or we had some type of mistake in a subtitle on a YouTube video went out. So something that you would think an entry-level person would do. And I was the person overseeing it, so it shouldn't have been done. And I share that. I share it for people to learn. I say why I'm sharing it. I share it for people to laugh, right? Because I laugh at myself. The second thing that I think that I do along those lines is we emphasize how important it is for people to fail quickly. We tell them that they will never be given something that if they fail, that it'll be critical to the organization, that they'll either lose their job or that we'll lose a client or that it'll make somebody lose revenue, right? Mm-hmm. So let them know that they're expected to fail. And I will tell them the way that I'm going to get them comfortable with that failure muscle is I will give them a limited amount of time. So yesterday, I'm creating a new content marketing project or a content machine around YouTube for one of the private equity clients that I work with. And we're taking trending news from today. We're recording a video on it today live, and it's going live on YouTube and on LinkedIn live. And then it needs to go to the editor, and the editor needs to cut up short clips that are going to be posted within 2 hours. And yesterday I gave him my first test for him to do. I've been testing the format for a while. And I said, here's how it's going to be. In 2 weeks from now, you're only going to have 60 minutes to record this. I'm not going to give more than an hour of your time to do it based around how important this project is and how fast it needs the urgency needs to be done. So right now, the first test, I want you to put on a timer as soon as we get off this call, and you're going to have 60 minutes. I want to see your best version. And I don't care how bad it is. I need you to get comfortable knowing that we're going to put out a product that is not perfectly polished. And so today you might be giving me something that's D+, and in 3 weeks it might be B+. A year from now it might be an A+, but only 1 hour. And that 60-minute limit I give to almost every new intern. And I tell them why it's being given to them, because I need to see that they feel comfortable with something that's not great.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and I have one more, Peter.
Yes.
Once somebody's been with us for about a month or two and they start making mistakes, I will ask them to share it in the Slack channel around mistakes. and share, hey guys, I'm sharing a mistake. I'm getting comfortable. I know Peter shares his mistakes every single week here. This is mine. This is embarrassing. And get comfortable laughing at themselves and sharing it with everyone else.
Excellent. And when they share mistake, are they sharing what they learned from it? Is there like a format to kind of turn it into more learning opportunity?
No, I think that's a good takeaway for me is, like share your mistake, explain why it is a mistake, explain how you should have done it better, and then what you learned from it. I think I could, just like I have a survey at the end of every day, I could maybe have those 3 questions for them when you share something in the failure channel.
Yes. And I understand this is asynchronous, right? They share on the Slack and people comment. Okay. Cool. Sometimes they do once a week, once every 2 weeks, also a synchronous meeting for like 1 hour, maybe the top 5 from the channel. It could be more deep dive if it's more like cross-functional or kind of more important for the organization and touches multiple clients. It could be a bit of a brainstorming on the learning. Because synchronous, it's for remote is a bit difficult, but it builds in the end rapport and trust, and it has another level of commitment. Excellent. So let's have a look. You have quite a dynamic business, so it's many interns and so on. What was your most exotic or exciting experience in remote teams? Something that's a good story to tell.
Oh, I think it's probably about 1.5 years ago, my project manager, general manager of Strategic Pete, got married in Mexico to a German guy. And she invited my wife and me to the wedding. I'd never met her. And obviously, when we decided to go, we knew that there was a chance that we wouldn't be able to see her beforehand. Because she has a lot of events going on. I'm probably the least important person at the wedding. And even though I'm her boss and was previous her internship mentor and so forth. So I met her 5 minutes after they said their vows.
Okay.
And the hug was unforgettable. We since have seen each other again. For the last month, we worked together in Scotland. And that was just magical. I mean, it's unforgettable, and I'm sure it was important to her, but it was unforgettable for me and my wife.
Yes, amazing. I always, in my book, I have always this delightful moment, and I lived it myself, when people build a lot of bonding but never met physically. They spend time on video and so on, and the moment they see each other and they're surprised by the hate and so on, and then they hug each other and they have this ultimate kind of feeling, and in the end, finally, you could embrace this person. So it is usually a highlight.
I have another story. I worked with an intern at a previous private equity turnaround project that I did. I hired her, and she ended up becoming kind of my right-hand woman in marketing. And I went to go meet her, and it was so funny because my stereotype of her from working with her for 2 years on Zoom is that she's the hardest working, the most amount of grit, the most amount of ambition you could ever imagine, a person who would work with me on a Saturday or Sunday, no questions asked, to get projects done or to be creative or to use energy outside of the kind of the busy workday. And when I met her in person, she is beautiful like a model. She looks very high maintenance. She looks like a person who doesn't know how to tie her own shoes, nor has she carried her own luggage. She just looked like the most uppity, perfect model person who would never work. And if I had met her in person, I don't think I would have hired her because I thought she would have been lazy and spoiled. And she was the complete opposite. So the book did not match its cover, and I'm glad that's the case. And I told her that story.
That's a great story. Thanks for sharing, Peter. Let's look at the leadership skills for the future. Now being more remote and more digital, what do you think are the top leadership skills in the digital age?
Ooh, I think it has to do at the beginning with trust. Being able to emanate, radiate trust via Zoom, via Slack is really hard. It's really, really hard. And I think that's why there's a lot of people who are going back to, forced in office meetings and making their employees come back. And it's because they might be amazing leaders in person, It's a different skill set to do it remotely.
Yes.
And can be learned. I don't think that I was probably born with remote leadership skills. I think I've probably learned it in the last 10 years, more so since COVID. In the last 4 years, I've probably perfected it or skilled up in it. I think that trust and rapport, digitally speaking, is probably the most important leadership skill.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And what's your take? You've mentioned quite a few things that you do in this direction, but what are your top 3 ways to kind of build trust and rapport remotely?
I would say from the beginning, what I see over and over, I see CEOs getting wrong when I start to engage with them. So my first month or 2 months, when I start working with a new client and they struggle with remote culture, or they bring me on to oversee part of their team, is CEOs do not put in the time at the beginning. That first week, you need to have a touch point where you see the person's face. It can't be over email. It can't be on a project management tool. It cannot be on Slack. You need to create some type of rapport where you laugh with that person, where the person sees the CEO confused or the CEO not organized. You need to see the CEO like a human being. That rapport, I think, needs to be done daily, no matter how much time that money costs. If you want to onboard a CMO like myself, or bring on a team where the intern's going to want to be committed to work with you for the next 4 or 5 years, like I have, I think that's the first mistake that I see, is a little bit of face-to-face time and trying to do everything over video onboarding or Slack messages. People need to hear you and feel you like a person.
Yes. This goes in this vulnerability, showing vulnerability, and then building trust and psychological safety, and leading by example. That you share your failures is great, and also the questionnaires that you do, the surveys every day. It shows attention, and not just they fill it in, but there is a management team who responds in an agile way. So all this is great. I'm just a provocative kind of. You mentioned several times my right-hand woman and so on. I wonder, what is your gender diversity in your team? Is it fluid or is it more stable? How is it currently from the 15 people?
That's a good question. My team always jokes that it's really hard for a guy to make it on my team. Currently, the makeup of my team doesn't reflect that. But I do tend to prefer working with female interns. And I think it might have to do with kind of three elements. I find that at the age of 22 to 26 years old, which are usually the interns, the female that's interested in marketing is a fast learner, gets remote culture just because they might be empathetic. They're more comfortable being vulnerable faster than a 20 to 26-year-old or 28-year-old. And when I say this, it sounds like I'm speaking only about women, but I'm also speaking kind of about myself, who I was at 22 to 28. So I'm not, if you're a man out there and you're listening to this and you don't identify it, don't worry, I'm kind of speaking about myself. So you might be the exception to the rule. I was not. And so I think that is why I tend to, if I were going to look at 100 applicants, I would say I would probably choose 60 females and 40 males that would make it past that filter.
Yes, I have 5 daughters, by the way, and on my teams, because I was IT manager long years, I was head of IT for EMEA, for a big multinational, and I always inherited like a male-dominated team, and by the time I left and we had some awards, it was like 60-40, and it worked for me. I think remote, I don't want to be stereotypical, but some of the qualities required, as you said, empathetic and so on, come more in the female kind of format. And even Harvard did a kind of study and research, what makes teams smarter. And number one factor was the ability to read emotions of the other, to read them in the right way. So in this case, you could build upon ideas and so on. Otherwise, the IQ of the group is not the average of the IQs. And sometimes you have very smart people. The ability to read emotions makes it like IQ. And it's not like N times if you have N team members, it's even more if people could read emotions. And again, for kind of evolutionary reasons, sometimes, the female come with a better skill set in this space. So
one other element I would add to it that you're kind of observation made me think of. The other element that I think is important for growth in a remote team, especially with interns of people that you don't know yet, right? Like they haven't proven themselves professionally. They don't have a resume. That you didn't hire them because they have a resume. You hire them because of the application process and their grit and their interest and their vulnerability, is the ability at the beginning to over communicate. Yes. And I say this to my interns at the beginning. I say, the first month, I'm not going to know who you are, what you're good at, what you're bad at, what you're afraid of, what you want to do, what you want to do that you're actually going to be good at. I don't know these things. And so I say the first 30 days, I need you to over communicate everything to me and to your managers. And yes. I will tell you when you can shut up and you can save time. You can dedicate the time you're using to over communicate to me, generating content or contributing to the team. And yes. Over communication, I feel that women are innately, naturally better at. And it's stereotypical. Sit in a room and watch guys talk about our feelings. We feel much more comfortable talking about a football match or the fish that we caught yesterday instead of how frustrating or how difficult our day was. And listen to the female in the other room, and they're way more comfortable. So that over communication works really well on a team that you can't be in a room and I can't read your body language in the same way or see you leave the room and how frustrated you are with the meeting. Oftentimes a female will tell me.
Yes. Amazing. I was in Bali in 2019 speaking on an event called Running Remote. Since then, I've been attending regularly, and there was a question, what's the number one skill to lead remote workers? And 500 founders of remote companies were using Slido and this word cloud. And in the end, the big word in the center was over communicate for the reasons you explained. So well done. Also, don't just give the task, tell them why we do what we do and what is the overall goal that this task would contribute. But yes, this is very important. And for why and what, some companies use video and then they would put it in like an asynchronous channel. You explain for the month, for example, what is the strategic goal and so on. So they're a smart way, but on the why and on the what, leaders as employees are expected to over-communicate. This is the glue that make remote teams effective. Now, last question. You may take your crystal ball out. What do you think is the future of remote teams? And like the future of work, would it be more remote? What are your visionary insights?
Wow, I haven't thought about this, Peter. To start it, I think, to be honest and vulnerable, is I don't know. I sit on the board of a couple organizations that have been resistant to remote from the very beginning. And I don't ever see them embracing remote in the next 5 or 10 years, even though I'm a big proponent of the benefits, the scalability, working in different hours, working with people who think differently than us. I work with people of all religions, all races, all cultures, and I love the fact that they think differently than me, and I think that contributes to our success. So I feel like I'm torn because the larger businesses that I work with, they are moving away from remote, and the smaller, more agile startups, venture capital, everyone is embracing remote, and the tools that I see are moving towards remote, right? Like I currently work with a private equity company in the online business space. So we buy online businesses, we take accredited investors, we buy those assets, we find a portfolio manager, and then we pay quarterly dividends. Mm-hmm. All of those companies that we are buying, every single one of them is remote, every single one, right? We've purchased 45 different assets in the last 3 years. And all of them are remote, and all of these are profitable companies, right? They're not venture capital. So yes. I feel like there's two tides that are going opposite directions, and I don't know what the next 3.0 of remote culture looks like. I think that you could answer it better than I.
No, thank you. I forgot my crystal ball today. But I believe, there will be more kind of scaling companies, and they embrace remote, and over time that would thrive. And also the remote companies that I know, as I mentioned, 1,000 plus, they are remote. They don't have an office, but they do at least 2 retreats per year. One is like all hands, the other is functional. So there is still some connection, and it becomes key if you use the time wisely. So remote first, but with like human elements, and many of them could be done asynchronously and remotely, and still having a close connection. Peter,
that makes sense.
thank you so much. Very practical, very insightful. I fully enjoyed, and I wish you good luck growing your business as well as your clients' businesses, and with fun and vulnerability.
Thank you so much, Peter. Pleasure.